If we look at General Bezruchko himself, he had a biography that is probably quite typical for many of the men of the Ukrainian 6th Rifle Division and other Ukrainians who fought on the side of the Poles during the Polish Bolshevik War. Most of the men from the Ukrainian 6th Sich Rifle Division had their background in the Austro-Hungarian army, in the Ukrainian units that were formed there. However, there was a certain influx of Ukrainians who had fought in the Tsarist Russian army during the Great War. Marko Bezruchko was one of those who had been educated in, or brought up first in, what was the Tsarist Russian Empire. Later was also given a military education in the Russian army. He was born in 1883 in the city of Tokmak, which today is best known for being the next large city which the Ukrainian army is currently pushing for. There is this offensive that probably a lot of people have heard that is taking place in the vicinity of the village of Robotyne at the moment. From Robotyne there's another 20 kilometers or so to reach the city of Tokmak. Once you reach the city of Tokmak, your conventional normal artillery is able to really pounce on the Russian lines that are going between east and west from Crimea to Mariupol and what is the real Russia, beyond Mariupol, of course, because the Russians unfortunately don't know where their borders end. And then you have within HIMARS range from Tokmak, you can reach all the way down to the coast, making logistics between Crimea and the parts that are of occupied Ukraine but are in the east, around Mariupol, much more difficult. So the city of Tokmak is really a crucial goal for the Ukrainian army in the upcoming weeks and months. And that is where Marko Bezruchko was born. So in a region that was contested over the previous centuries, but back in 1883 when he was born was naturally firmly in the hands of the Russian Empire. He was a talented young man. He quickly became one of the best students of his school, and he was attracted by a military career, which he also pursued. On the eve of the First World War, in 1912, he joined the Nikolai Academy in St. Petersburg, a truly elite school for the Russian army. That is also where he received his education, and later on was shipped off to fight in the First World War. By the end of the war, after the Bolshevik Revolution, he decided that he would not fight for neither the Whites or the Reds in the Civil War. He wanted to return to Ukraine and fight for the armies that were being created that would fight for an independent Ukraine. And this is what he did. Naturally, with his great education, with his experience from the First World War, he quickly rose in the ranks and was made part of the general staff of the Ukrainian National Republic, one of these two Ukrainian states that were created after the First World War. You had the Western Ukrainian People's Republic, centered around the city of Lviv, which was fighting mainly against the Poles for that region. And then you had the Ukrainian People's Republic that was centered around Kiev and was mainly fighting against the Bolsheviks. So this is where he initially saw battle against the Bolsheviks. In the coming year, in 1919, he was delegated to become the chief of staff of the Ukrainian Corps of Independent Sich Riflemen. This was the unit that in the coming year, in 1920, would be turned into the Ukrainian 6th Rifle Division.
Yep.
And him being chief of staff then meant that he also took control of the Ukrainian 6th Rifle Division once it was created. He was a good commander. He never made any glaring mistakes during the Polish Bolshevik War. Maybe he didn't have any truly genius plans either that really made him stand out, but he was good in motivating his troops, keeping the morale up, the spirits up, and he certainly didn't lack the will to fight. Following the war, he was one of those Ukrainians that were interned in Poland. Many of those Ukrainians, they felt that in Poland there was not really a good enough environment or atmosphere to continue the struggle against the Soviet Union, as they felt that the Poles, they were hoping that they would be able to create good relations with their Soviet neighbor. They simply didn't want to fight another war anytime soon, as the country had been so devastated in the previous 6 years of war. And they felt that the Ukrainians that had been trying to fight against the Soviet Union, even after the Poles had signed the truce in November 1920, and during that second winter campaign of 1921, they felt that the Ukrainians could be somewhat of a liability for relations between Poland and the Soviet Union. So many of these commanders from the Ukrainian army, they left. Some settled in Prague, some settled in Paris, such as Petliura himself, the leader of the Ukrainian People's Republic. But there was a significant number of Ukrainians who decided to remain in Poland, especially in eastern Poland, where there were regions where there was a large Ukrainian population, and in many areas even a majority population, especially of course in those rural areas in the east. The Ukrainians felt simply that there they would at least be able to live among their own, to do some kind of community work, and also keep an eye on that border with the Soviet Union. And they were hopeful that sooner or later there would be a second attempt to liberate their lands.